On the 1st of May 1851, Queen Victoria departed Buckingham Palace for the short journey to the northern entrance of the Crystal Palace building in Hyde Park. To mark the 175th anniversary of the exhibition opening, we present a virtual tour of the Great Exhibition via our VR simulation of the 1851 Great Exhibition, which is available as a free-of-charge educational tool via Steam. We start by Hyde Park's Prince of Wales Gate, between the West Lodge, built in 1846, and the East Lodge, added in 1851. The main entrance, under the arched transept roof, is not quite in the middle of the building. The western side of the building stretches 864 foot from the transept, whereas the eastern side is 48 foot longer, stretching 912 foot. The semicircular fascia of the transept roof is divided into 12 sections, and these have been utilized as a clock face. To allow the clock face to fit into a half rather than a full circle, the clock's hands are double-ended. As they drop below the horizontal at the right, the other end rises above the horizontal of the left. Using the VR teleport facility, we move into the entrance lobby. On either side we can see the ticket booths and turnstiles for day visitors. In the middle are the desks where season ticket holders are admitted. Here you can also see one of the mighty elm trees, the preservation of which led to the creation of the arched roof to fully enclose them. We now pass through the huge wooden doors into the south transept, and then through the park gates by Cottam and Hallam. These are now near the entrance to Rackheath Park in Norwich. In the centre of the south transept is an equestrian statue of Queen Victoria, by Thomas Thornycroft. Like many of the sculptures, the original is lost, and so they are represented here by recreations. Just beyond Thomas Thornycroft's statue is a postbox, either side of which are sculptures by Thomas's wife Mary Thornycroft. To the west, Jealousy of Medea. To the east, Alfred the Great receiving a book of Saxon poetry from his mother. Moving further towards the center of the building, we find Engel's Amazons and Argonauts. This piece was made for Prince Albert. After the Great Exhibition, it was moved to Osborne House, where it remains to this day. On the east side of the south transept are further sculptures, starting with Patrick McDowell's Virginius and his daughter. This is now in storage at Yorkshire Sculpture Park, pending restoration. Next is Woodington's Young Girl at a Spring, which is untraced. Next are 4 pieces by Henry Weeks. On the left, The Suppliant is untraced. Middle back is Girl with Hoop, and middle front is Sleeping Child with Dog, both sold at auction in 1984 and 1998 respectively. On the right is Richard Marquis Wellesley, which is mounted above the Gurkha stair at the former India Office. The next group of 3 is by Patrick McDowell. Cupid on the left and Child at Prayer on the right are both untraced. Eve, in the middle, is in the collections of the Victoria and Albert Museum but is not on display. Next is Hancock's Beatrice, which is now on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum. To the right of Beatrice is Dancing Girl Reposing by William Calder Marshall, now at the Battersea Arts Centre. Now we cross the transept to the west side. At the south end we find 5 pieces by Luff, featuring subjects from Shakespeare. From left to right, Duncan's Horses, the bronze of which is now in the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum. Jealousy of Oberon and Ariel, both of which are untraced. Puck, which is on display at the Victoria and Albert Museum. And Titania, which is untraced. Moving north we come to 2 pieces by Edward Hodges Bailey. On the left, the untraced nymph preparing for the bath. On the right is Tired Hunter, which is now at Chimay Museum, Taiwan. Next are 2 untraced pieces by Edward Baring Stevens, Satan Tempting Eve, and next to it Satan Vanquished. Victory by Rauch was purchased by Queen Victoria for Prince Albert, and is now at Osborne House. And here at the southwest corner, where the nave and transept cross, is Locke's Archangel Michael, having subdued Satan. From here we turn to look at the Crystal Fountain, seen here in this photo, by Claude Marie Ferrier. 4 tons of glass, 27 foot high, with a basin 24 foot in diameter. The image of the fountain was adopted as a logo by Schweppes. North of the Crystal Fountain are equestrian statues by James Wyatt. The original plaster models at the exhibition are lost, represented here by Thomas Thornycroft's Victoria from Liverpool, and a recreation of Wyatt's Prince Albert. On the west side is John Bell's Lord Falkland, now in St Stephen's Hall at the Palace of Westminster. Next is Edward Boring Stevens' Deerstalker. The model at the Great Exhibition was plaster. Our model here is of the later bronze casting now in Northernhay Gardens in Exeter. The next several pieces are untraced, assumed lost. Abel and Thirza by Thomas Earl. Then Creation of Adam by Edward James Physick. Murder of the Innocents by Peter Hollins. The Forsaken by Andrew Hume Forrest. Samson Bursting His Bonds by James LeGroux. As we enter the main refreshment court, we come to Henry Sibson's Shipwrecked Sailor Boy. Next is a copy of Apollo Belvedere by Bruciani, and near that is Rizpah, watching over the dead bodies of her sons by Henry Stormont Lifechild. Schweppes paid £5,500 for the rights to be the exclusive caterer for the Great Exhibition. The actual running of the refreshment courts was subcontracted. The main refreshment court was subcontracted to Mr. Younghusband. The west and east refreshment courts were managed by Mr. Masters. Continuing north, we approach the Queen's entrance. To the right of this is the Queen's private retiring room. Strategically placed planters help shield the ladies' and gentlemen's waiting rooms from direct view. Moving into the gentlemen's waiting room, we can see both urinals and, within individual cubicles, George Jennings' first public flushing toilets. Note the hand pump arrangement, similar to a modern marine head. Visitors were required to pay 1 penny to use these toilets, and, although it may be apocryphal, this is said to be where the expression, to spend a penny comes from. Leaving the gentlemen's waiting room, we look at the sculptures on the east side of the north transept, starting with the Untraced Horse's Head by Hamilton McCarthy, represented here by a similar piece. Next is Prometheus Chained by William Theed, also untraced. A plaster model of Thomas Milnes, Duke of Wellington, is next. This is untraced, but the stone version is now at Wellington Park, Woolwich. We now turn to pass through the Coalbrookdale Gates. These are now in a slightly modified form on South Carriage Drive, where it crosses West Carriage Drive, just a few hundred yards from their location within the Great Exhibition Building. Here is John Bell's Boy with Swan Fountain, now in the grounds of the Coalbrookdale Museum of Iron. Next we come to the stand of naturalist and taxidermist John Hancock. 4 of the pieces survive in the collections of the Great North Museum Hancock, and are modelled here. This includes the 3-piece set of A Falcon Attack. Only the middle piece, Struggle with the Quarry, is on display. Hooded Falcon and Gorged Falcon are in their stores, along with Lammergeier. We return to the east side of the transept for a further 5 untraced sculptures: Edward Richardson's Youthful Athlete, James LeGroux's Milton and His Daughters, George Gammon Adams' Ancient Britain, and 2 pieces by Thomas Earl, Jacob and Rachel, and Sin Triumphant. Here is John Henry Foley's John Hampden, now in St. Stephen's Hall at the Palace of Westminster. Returning to the Crystal Fountain, we look west along the main avenue, or nave, which was devoted to Britain and its colonies. At the end of the western nave, immediately adjacent to the transept, is another recreation of a lost piece, Venus Disarming Cupid by Edward Davis. To the north of this are 3 model boats from Bombay Dockyard. These are now at the Science Museum Group's Hawking Building. Now we come to one of 2 full-size versions of John Bell's Eagle Slayer. This bronze version is now in the grounds of Hole Park in Kent. Adjacent to this is one of 2 full-size versions of John Henry Foley's Youth at a Stream. This version is now in Bancroft Gardens, Stratford-upon-Avon. Moving into the India section on the south side is a howdah mounted on an elephant. However, the only stuffed elephant which could be located in England was an African elephant from Saffron Walden Museum. The elephant remained there until disposed of in the early 1960s. Moving back to the nave, there are several sculptures where we have models of the actual item displayed at the exhibition. The Duke of Rutland, which was, until April 2024, in the marketplace in Leicester. The statue is now in storage during redevelopment of the site. Horse and Dragon, now in the grounds of Stratfield Sayer House. Sir William Follett, now in Westminster Abbey. We turn north into the Fine Art Court. Here we find Spring, by Thomas Wilkinson Wallace, now at Loft Museum. On the north wall is a map of Manchester in 24 sheets. Looking at the various copies of well-known paintings, one might be surprised to learn that paintings per se were not permitted as exhibits at the Great Exhibition. However, using a painting to demonstrate a reproduction technique was permitted. Returning to the nave, here is the rather long-winded titled, The Faithful Friend of Man Trampling Underfoot His Most Insidious Enemy, also known as Bashaw Dog, now at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Looking up, we see the seal of the province of Canada, which incorporates the seals of Upper Canada and Lower Canada, the two female figures indicating sister provinces. The province of Canada corresponds approximately to modern-day Quebec and Ontario. Among the items in the Canada section are a canoe, a sleigh, and a fire engine, which won a prize at the exhibition. Just south of the Canada section is the small area devoted to Australia, New Zealand, and the Caribbean. We are only just starting to add exhibits to this section. From New Zealand, a lithograph of John Alexander Gilfillan's painting of a native village or pa. From Bermuda, 2 items carved from cedarwood by black master carpenter John Henry Jackson. From here we pass into the British Sculpture Court. There were approximately 100 pieces displayed in this court. So far we have included about a half of these, some as models, others as cut-out billboard images, until models can be generated. This includes George Nelson's Victory, now at Canterbury Cathedral. On the opposite side of the room is John Flaxman by Musgrave Lewthwaite Watson, now at University College London. A little to the north is John Wesley by Samuel Manning, now at Methodist Central Hall. And in the northwest corner of the room is this impressive relief of the Baptism of Christ by John Edward Carew, the model being of the version at St. John the Baptist Church in Brighton. We leave the British Sculpture Court and cross into the Medieval Court. Above the doorways on the north wall are various stained glass windows. Most of these survive at various locations, including St. Augustine's in Ramsgate. The black and white images are of the now lost windows from Alton Towers. To our right is a walnut table, now in the library at Lincoln's Inn. On the east wall is an untraced altar. On it are placed 2 reliquaries, now at St. Augustine's Ramsgate. Also from St. Augustine's is the iron candlestick. The plinth is decorated with jardiniere, now at the Victoria and Albert Museum. In the middle of the room is a stove by Hardman. The stove itself does not survive, but many of the tiles can be found in museums and private collections. At the middle of the north wall is the monument to Bishop Walsh, now at St. Chad's Cathedral in Birmingham. Leaving the medieval court, we return to the nave. Here we find The Mother, by John Henry Foley, now at the Royal Dublin Society. Heading west we come to a fountain and sculptures by John Thomas. Rosamunda is untraced. The fountain was installed at Preston Hall in Aylesford, Kent. In the early 1900s, Acis and Galatea was donated to Maidstone Corporation, and it was placed in Brenchley Gardens. It was removed following vandalism, and is now in the care of Maidstone Borough Council. Next we come to a stone cross decorated with scenes from the Bible, either side of which are columns of madrepore marble from Devon. We pass a cabinet displaying papier-mâché goods and a decorated piano by John Broadwood to reach the magnificent sculpture of brothers Lords Eldon and Stowell, now at University College, Oxford. Beyond that is a turret clock by Dent. After the exhibition, this clock was installed at King's Cross Station, where the mechanism remained in use for nearly 100 years, before being replaced with a more modern mechanism. Now we turn north into the machinery at Rest Court, where to our left we find the great hydraulic press, which was used to raise the box sections of the Britannia Bridge over the Menai Strait, the bridge having been completed in 1850. To our right is vacuum sugar apparatus by Pontifex and Wood, seen here in this photo by Claude Marie Ferrier. In front of us is a sewing machine by Judkins, a reproduction of which is now at the Science Museum Group's Hawking Building. Moving west we come to a crane by Fox and Henderson, the contractors that built the exhibition building. It is displayed holding an example of one of the trusses from which the building is constructed. Under the crane is a set of cast iron pipes by D.Y. Stewart of Glasgow. Also under the crane is a steam hammer by John Nasmith. We will meet him again later in our tour in his other role as a keen amateur astronomer and artist. Beyond the steam hammer is the east end of the railway passage. Running west-east are 2 lengths of what we would now call standard gauge track, approximately 225 foot in length, stretching to the west wall of the building. The south track is devoted to locomotives, there being 9 standard gauge steam locomotives here, all of which are now included in the simulation. None of these locomotives survive. We start with 2 LNWR locomotives, the Liverpool and Cornwall, between which is a locomotive weighing table by Pooley. Moving along the railway passage we pass the Hawthorne, the Kitson Aerolite, the Wilson double boiler tank engine, and the Fairbairn tank engine. Next comes Ariel's Girdle by William Bridges Adams, And next to this on the north track is the Southeastern Railway composite carriage number 88, also by Adams. Continuing west we pass the rather cute-looking Little England, by George England, and then Folkestone, the only locomotive of which there is a photograph in situ at the Great Exhibition. From this photograph we have been able to correctly reproduce the misspelling of both Dover and Folkestone. Next comes the curious-looking Impulsoria, a horse-powered locomotive, which had undergone trials out of Nine Elms Terminus in 1850. There is one more steam locomotive in the railway passage, at the extreme west end the GWR, Lord of the Isles. It is at the west end, so that only a short section of broad gauge track is required. Passing through the exit door we come to a pair of greenhouses, and between them a granite obelisk by W. and J. Freeman. This was installed in Whitechapel High Street in 1853, where it remained until destroyed due to a lorry crash in 1913. Turning south we pass level crossing gates by Charles Young and Company of Edinburgh, before coming to a display of chains and anchors by Brown Lennox and Company. Beyond this is the cheese ring column. This was purchased by Samuel Stevens Marling, who had a stand in the mixed fabrics and shawls section of the exhibition. It is now approximately 300 meters north of All Saints Church in Selsley near Stroud. To the west is a statue of Richard Coeur de Lion. This is a model of the bronze casting now in Old Palace Yard, Westminster, based on the plaster version shown at the exhibition. Although the bas-reliefs on the pedestal were not present at the Great Exhibition, we include them in our model as the left side relief is not normally visible, as it is beyond the Palace of Westminster security barrier. To the northwest of the main exhibition is the boiler house, which contains steam boilers to power the moving machinery, the steam being carried via an underground pipe to the main building. On the south side of the western entrance to the building are examples of coal, and at the extreme southwest of the enclosure is a beam made using Portland cement, which was tested to destruction at the end of September 1851. Just north of this beam is a copy, in artificial stone, of Giovanni de Bologna's Mercury, which can be clearly seen in this photo. Re-entering the building via the southwest door, we come to a cabinet for displaying mineral waters by Richard Ellis, which is now in the Royal Pump Room Museum in Harrogate. Continuing east, we come to a statue of William Wallace. The statue from the Great Exhibition is untraced. This is a model of a statue of a virtually identical pose in Baltimore. We continue east through the agricultural passage, and then turn north back towards this fireproof safe, by John Tan, which is now at the London Silver Vaults. We turn south again, to enter the Sheffield Court from the south side. Here we find two exhibition files by Hiram Younge, both now at Kelham Island Museum in Sheffield. One is in the main museum, the other in the Ken Hawley collection. To the left of the files are scissors and penknives by T&G Wilkinson, also now at the Ken Hawley collection. On the west wall is a 5-foot diameter circular saw blade by Spear and Jackson. We continue north back into the nave, where we find a cast-iron fireplace mantelpiece by Henry Hall, also now at the Kelham Island Museum. In the middle of the nave is a display case by Joseph Rogers and Sons, the centerpiece of which is the Norfolk knife, now at the Cutlers Hall in Sheffield. Also in this case are exhibition scissors, now in a private collection. Returning west we come to John Bell's statue of Shakespeare. The sculptor gifted it to the Sydenham Crystal Palace, and hence it was lost in the 1936 fire. Beyond Shakespeare is the Colebrookdale Dome, under which stands the second copy of John Bell's Eagle Slayer. This one is now at the Colebrookdale Museum of Iron. On the north side of the nave is a Roman-style enameled slate bath by Magnus. Near this are 3 Ashford black marble tables by Thomas Woodruff, 2 of which are now at Buxton Museum and Art Gallery. Returning to the nave, we come to the lost piece, The Mourners, by John Graham Lowell. Just to the west is a lighthouse lens, and to the south of that a cast-iron vase by Handyside. We pass the large astronomical telescope by Ross as we turn north again and enter the building court. Here we find a cross-section of a building showing the construction techniques for Prince Albert's model houses for the laboring classes. A complete model house consisting of 4 3-bedroom family flats was constructed across the road from the exhibition building in Hyde Park Barracks. After the exhibition it was moved to Kennington, where it is now used as the headquarters for the charity, Trees for Cities. As we return to the nave we find a number of boots and shoes, now at Northampton Museum and Art Gallery, including several by Hobie in this display case, shoes by Dowie and Walker, and this magnificent pair of Wellington boots by John Hefford. Crossing to the south side of the nave, we come to the marble font by Payman, now at St. Helen's Church, Abingdon-on-Thames. Continuing west from here we come to a marketplace fountain by Seeley. Beyond this is another lighthouse lens, and beyond that, a model of Liverpool docks. We now turn to the south to another recreation of a lost sculpture, Constantine Panormo's Liberation of Caractacus. Behind that is a jacquard loom, which we pass as we climb the stairs. At the top of the stairs we turn east, where we find a cabinet containing a botanical display of anatomized plants by Emma King. This is now at the Taupo Museum in New Zealand. Returning west, crossing the bridge and continuing west, we come to George Merriweather's Tempest Prognosticator, a barometer based on the questionable principle of leech behavior to predict the weather. The original 1851 Tempest Prognosticator is lost. This model is based on a copy made for the 1951 Festival of Britain, which is now at Whitby Museum. On the west wall are a collection of illustrations of the moon by amateur astronomer and artist James Naismith. This is the same James Naismith who invented the steam hammer displayed in the machinery at Rest Court on the ground floor. We now pass in front of a magnificent organ by Willis, now in Winchester Cathedral. Turning east once more we come to the typograph, a form of typewriter for the blind which is now at the Science Museum Group's Hawking Building. A little further east is George Richard Smith's Comic Electric Telegraph, which is now at Bristol 1904 Arts. There are 3 buttons, each of which operates a small shutter within the box to reveal the same symbol as etched on the respective button. Simultaneously the buttons move the jaw, move the eyes, and sound the bell. Amazingly, the device is still operational. We now cross the bridge towards the north wall and turn east to enter the anatomical section. Here is a wax model of a dissected head by Joseph Town. This is now at the Gordon Museum of Pathology. We now move rapidly eastwards towards the transept, turning north to the stand of Samuel Alcock and Company. Here is the Plate of All Nations, now in a private collection. We continue north, where we find several statuettes. Then we turn east again, passing over Schweppes main refreshment court. We then turn south, passing a model of a dodo. On the east wall is a picture of Chepstow Castle by Moonlight, made entirely from cut tissue paper. This is now at the Victoria and Albert Museum. Just south of here, at the top of the stairs, is Gulliver, in Lilliput, by Adolf Fleischmann. This is now at the German Toy Museum in Sonneberg. Turning east, we see the dark partition in which the various pieces of stained glass were mounted. Traveling rapidly along the gallery we come to 2 pieces by Stefan Kellner of Nuremberg. These are now in the collections of the Victoria and Albert Museum. Further east are 2 pieces by Isaac Alexander Gibbs. These pieces are believed lost, but illustrations survive, as can be seen with this watercolor. We now continue along the gallery to the east end of the gallery. We then turn south and then west again, before turning south once more to be able to pass in front of the Gray and Davison organ. This organ is now in St. Anne's Limehouse. We now continue round the south side of the gallery, and then turn west until we reach the eastmost stairs. We then go down the stairs. Note, the east of the building is primarily for foreign exhibitors. At the bottom of the stairs we turn south and then east, to exit the building via the door at the southeast corner of the building, which leads us to the enclosure for large foreign exhibits. Outside the east end of the building we find the Granite Cross by Carl August Kullgren. This is now located on a hillside outside Drogget in Sweden. We now proceed north, and re-enter the building via the eastern entrance. In front of us is the Iron Truss Bridge, exhibited by the New York Iron Bridge Company. After the exhibition it was installed as Bullen's Bridge at Swindon. To our left we find Oliver Twist by Robert Ball Hughes, and behind the Paratoptic Lock by Day and Newell, which is now in the Science Museum. Next to this we can see chandeliers by Cornelius and Company of Philadelphia. We return to the center of the nave, where we find Hiram Powers, the Greek slave, which was mounted on a rotating base. This is now at Raby Castle, complete with the same base, although it no longer rotates. Opposite the Greek slave is another piece by Powers, Fisherboy. A later version of this piece is now at the Met Fifth Avenue. Continuing west, we come to this large Swedish porphyry jar. On the south side of the nave are several Scandinavian sculptures including Malin Shepherd, now at the National Museum Stockholm, Oreste and Fisherboy, both by Bisson, and Jerichau's Adam and Eve after the fall. These last 3 all now at Glyptoteket Copenhagen. Returning to the middle of the nave, we find Even the Serpent by Johannes Antonius van der Ven. This is now at Bootle Town Hall. To the west, a half-size model for a pedestal for a statue of Friedrich Wilhelm III. The full-size pedestal and statue are now in Berlin's Tiergarten Park, upon which this model is based. It stands between the Stuttgart horses, which are now at Die Rossebandige Stuttgart. Our simulation currently uses models of similar pose alternate statues. However, models of the originals are currently in preparation and will be included in the simulation soon. Next comes the Bavarian Lion by Ferdinand Miller, which is now part of the Quadriga on Munich's Siegstor. Due to difficulty in accessing the original, our simulation uses a model of a similar pose alternate statue. Looking at the next three pieces, King George of Poddebrady, on the left, and Queen Libusa of Bohemia, on the right, are both by Ludwig Schwanthaler, and both are now in the National Museum in Prague. Between them is Erdmann Theodor Khalid's Boy with Swan. The version at the Great Exhibition is now at Osborne House, although the model here is based on an alternate version in Matejki Square, Chorzów, Poland. Next comes a relief globe for the blind, and next to that a copy of the colossal Amazon and Tiger by August Kiss. This is a model of the original which stands outside the Altes Museum in Berlin. We now divert north to see Tableau of a Rural Fete from Sonneberg. At the center back is a model of Schloss Rosenau at Coburg, the birthplace of Prince Albert. Turning round and looking up at the gallery, we see the organ by Johann Friedrich Schulze, of Paulinzella. This is similar to the organ at the Church of St. Peter and Paul in Molschleben, Gotha, Thuringia. Returning to the nave, there are several more copies of famous sculptures, represented here by models of the originals, including Resting Deer by Rauch, now at Sanssouci, Potsdam Wild Park. Here is Eve at the Fountain by Bailey, now at Bristol Museum and Art Gallery. Hebe by Canova at the State Hermitage Museum, St. Petersburg. Kneeling Niobe by Timotheos, now at the State Museum of Art, Copenhagen. Turning south, we enter the Austrian sculpture court. Passing this sculpture of Radetzky by Fernkorn. This area held several sculptures by Monti, Fraccaroli, Galli and Stradzer. Leaving the Austrian sculpture court, we return to the nave to enter this massive viewing box, which houses Giuseppe Bertini's magnificent Dante and some of his ideas. As we leave, we come to Fraccaroli's Wounded Achilles. Turning north, we enter the section containing Hermann Pluquet's The Comical Creatures of Württemberg. Returning to the nave, we find Raphael Monti's Sister Anglers, and opposite that is Giuseppe Pierotti's Binding Mazeppa to a Horse. Continuing west along the nave, we enter the Belgium section. On the south side of the nave is De Cuyper's Canadian Woman Lamenting Her Child. Then, Faithful Messenger by Joseph Giefs. Behind that is Freikin's Prayer, and by the bottom of the stairs, Giotto's Madonna. In front of that is The Lion in Love by Guillaume Giefs. Returning to the center of the nave, at the eastern end of the Belgium section is Giotto's Torments of Cain, and behind that on the north side of the nave is the Young Giotto drawing by Joseph Tschurlinks. Again moving south, we come to Cupid Disarmed by Joseph Jacquet, and Truth by Eugene Simonis, and west of them Freikin's Cupid Captive. The centerpiece of the Belgium section was a copy of Eugene Simoni, Godefroy de Bouillon, represented here by a model of the original in Place Royale, Brussels. This photo by Claude-Marie Ferrier shows 4 of the 5 smaller works surrounding Godefroy's base. Starting at the southwest corner is De Cuyper's Infant Moses, then The Happy Child by Simonis, then Freikin's Cupid in the Cradle. Next is The Unhappy Child by Simonis. Finally, the only one not visible in Ferrier's photograph, Paul et Virginie by Guillaume Giefs. Turning to face north, we find Freikin's Psyche calling on love for help. And behind that is Van Linden's Madonna. As we continue west, we enter the France section of the exhibition. Here we find 3 works by Le Chêne, L'Attaque, Mother, Child and Eagle, Deliverer. Behind them is Debay's Genius of the Hunt. We move south into an area devoted to French bronzes and porcelain, shown here in this watercolor by Joseph Nash. Here is the stand of Edouard Honoré, displaying items of porcelain. Returning to the nave, we find further sculptures, including Cain and His Race Cursed by God by Antoine Etex, Le Cain's Dancing Faun, now in Luxembourg Gardens, Paris, Du Seigneur Saint Michael, Overthrowing Satan, and The City of Paris Imploring God for the Victims of Cholera by Etex. The model is of the version now in the entrance porch of the Chapel of the Salpêtrière in Paris. We continue west past the organ by Alexandre Ducroquet and the fountain by J.P. Victor André. We now turn north, passing a cabinet which displayed musical instruments by Belgian Adolphe Sax, the inventor of the saxophone, arriving at Christophe Fratton's Eagles and Prey, now in Central Park, New York. We continue north to the Algerian corridor, and from here we turn north into the room featuring Beauvais and Gobelin tapestries, Sèvres porcelain, and various French sculptures. We return to the nave via the Rome section, featuring sculptures by various Rome-based sculptors, including Lawrence MacDonald's Lord Kilmorey, now at Morne Park House, Newry, Rinaldi's Rinaldo and Armida, Benzoni's Cupid and Psyche. The model is based on the copy at Musée Marmottan Monet Paris, and two pieces by Richard James Wyatt, a nymph and nymph Glycera. Just to the east of Wyatt's pieces is the colossal zinc statue of Queen Victoria by the Vielmontagne Zinc Company. Continuing west we come to mosaics by Domenico Moglia. The two on the east side of the display are in the collections of the Victoria and Albert Museum. The one on the west side is believed to now be in a private collection. Just south of the mosaics is Highland Mary by Spence, now at Liverpool's Walker Art Gallery, and opposite it on the north side of the nave is Nencini's Bacchus. Model is a version at Villa Vauban, Luxembourg. Further west we pass a Spanish cannon, and then a wine jar, or tinaja, before turning north to find a collection of tiles by Valls, now in the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum. Next we come to three British sculptures. On the north side of the nave is William Calder Marshall's Dr. Jenner, now in Kensington Gardens. In the middle is the Marquis of Bute by John Evans Thomas, now at Callaghan Square, Cardiff. On the south side of the nave is Dr. Goodall by Henry Weeks, now at Eton College. Back in the centre of the nave, in front of the Marquis of Bute, is The Orphans by Felix Martin Miller. Just west of this is the Prince of Wales' Shield, now at Windsor Castle, and, in the large gilded cage, the Koh-i-Noor diamond. This is before it was recut in 1852. Moving north into the Greece section we find some Greek text. The upper piece of text translates as, "Take courage, tomorrow will be better." This is an expression used to encourage hard work, and is likely quoted due to the rapid growth of the Greek economy over the previous 20 years. The lower piece of text translates as, "A neighbor is hard to deal with when he competes for wealth, but rivalry is good for mortals." Given this is placed above an entrance to the Ottoman tent, it may be a reference to the Greek War of Independence from the Ottoman Empire, which ran from 1821 to 1829. Returning to the nave we come to John Bell's Andromeda, now in the grounds of Osborne House. Beyond this is a portrait of Prince Albert on Sèvres porcelain. On the other side is a portrait of Queen Victoria. We now turn south, taking the stairs behind Dr. Goodall. As we reach the top of the stairs we enter the France, Lyon silks and shawls section. Here we find several silk weavings, including images of the royal family by Potin Rambaud and Company, and several pieces by Carquier. Versions of these pieces are at the National Silk Art Museum in Western Missouri. Don't forget the simulation can now be downloaded from Steam. It is free of charge, and always will be. Although best when used with a VR headset, if you don't have a headset it will also work in desktop mode, using your monitor, keyboard and mouse.